Some songs don't just belong to the moment they were made in, they outlive it. They show up in a decade of bell-bottoms and AM radio and somehow sound like they were recorded in a different era entirely. The 1960s had plenty of those. Songs that confused listeners, baffled radio stations, and then quietly became the blueprint for everything that followed. So let's go back and listen again. Here are 20 awesome songs from the 60s that were years ahead of their time. Number 20, Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles. Opened the recording sessions for their 1966 album Revolver, not with something safe, but with the most experimental track they had ever attempted. Tomorrow Never Knows was recorded on April 6, 1966, at EMI Studios in Abbey Road, and it established immediately that this album would go somewhere no pop record had gone before. John Lennon's vocals were fed through a Leslie speaker cabinet, a piece of equipment normally used with a Hammond organ, to produce a spinning, otherworldly effect. Each member of the band brought in tape loops they had created at home on their personal recording machines. In the studio, those loops were run on separate tape machines and mixed live by the engineers, meaning no two playbacks were exactly the same. The sound, built on a single droning chord with reversed guitar, layered tape manipulation, and an Indian tambura underpinning everything, had no real precedent in pop music. Song Closed Revolver, released in August 1966, and became recognized over time as one of the first examples of what would eventually be called sampling, and more broadly, the studio being treated as an instrument in itself. Music critics and producers across the decades have cited it as a direct predecessor to electronic music, ambient music, and the entire concept of sound collage. Number 19, Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys. Brian Wilson began recording Good Vibrations on February 18, 1966, and didn't finish until September of that year. 7 months, 20 sessions, and 4 different Los Angeles studios: Western Recorders, Gold Star Studios, Sunset Sound, and CBS Columbia Square. Each studio was chosen for the acoustic quality it lent to a different section of the song. Wilson described his approach as building the song from short fragments, moods he called feels, assembled into a whole like a mosaic. This modular method of recording was entirely new. Rather than tracking from start to finish, Wilson was composing with sections of tape, layering and rearranging them. The process consumed more than 90 hours of recorded material and cost approximately $50,000, an almost unthinkable figure for a single at the time. Good Vibrations was released on October 10, 1966, and reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in December. It also topped the charts in the United Kingdom, France, New Zealand, and several other countries. Inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1994, it directly influenced the Beatles' approach to recording Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and its modular production technique reshaped how records were made. Number 18, A Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum. Procol Harum released A Whiter Shade of Pale on May 12, 1967, as their debut single, with almost no promotion behind it. London's pirate radio station, Radio London, gave it heavy airplay after listeners responded immediately, and Durham Records rushed the release. The music drew on a counter-melody from Johann Sebastian Bach, specifically the Air on the G string from the Orchestral Suite No. 3, performed by Matthew Fisher on a Hammond organ. Gary Brooker, who wrote the music and sang lead, had been studying jazz adaptations of Bach by the Jacques Lussier Trio, and that influence shaped the song's entire architecture. The result belonged to no single genre. Not classical, not rock, not psychedelic. It occupied a space of its own. Lyricist Keith Reid got the title from a phrase overheard at a party. The original version had 4 verses, only 2 made the recording. The song reached number 1 on the UK singles chart for 6 weeks and number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 and has sold more than 10 million copies worldwide. In 2018, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted it into its singles category. It remains the most played record on British radio over the past 6 decades. Number 17, Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan recorded Like a Rolling Stone on June 16, 1965, at Columbia Recording Studios in New York. At over 6 minutes, it was nearly twice the length of anything radio would typically consider playing. Columbia Records pushed to have it cut down. Dylan refused, and the full version was released. Radio stations played it anyway. The song entered the Billboard Hot 100 on July 31, 1965, and climbed to number 2, held from the top by the Beatles' Help. The sessions involved keyboardist Al Cooper, who was in the studio as an observer and talked his way into playing the organ part, an instrument he wasn't especially fluent on. His searching, tentative style became one of the song's defining sounds. Dylan had written the song in a creative burst during June 1965, filling pages before any musical arrangement existed. In 2004, Rolling Stone ranked it number 1 on its list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. It is widely credited with expanding the boundaries of what popular music could say and how long it could take saying it. Number 16, Whole Lotta Love by Led Zeppelin. Released in November 1969 on Led Zeppelin's second album, Whole Lotta Love was the band's first charting single in the United States. It was recorded at several studios in London and Los Angeles throughout 1969, including Olympic Studios. What separated the song from everything else on radio that year was its extended middle section, where the track breaks down entirely into studio manipulation, backward recordings, panning audio, echo effects, and a theremin played by Jimmy Page, producing an eerie, sliding pitch with no equivalent in mainstream rock at the time. Page's distorted guitar riff became one of the most imitated in rock history. The song reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 in Canada. It won the Grammy Award for Best Hard Rock Performance in 1991, more than 2 decades after its release when the category finally existed. Its influence on hard rock and the architecture of the guitar-driven song was immediate and lasting. Number 15, 8 Miles High by the Byrds. The Byrds recorded 8 Miles High in December 1965 and released it as a single in March 1966. Gene Clark wrote most of the song, with contributions from Roger McGuinn and David Crosby. McGuinn's 12-string guitar work drew explicitly from Indian classical music and the free jazz of John Coltrane, a combination that had never appeared in pop music before. Radio stations in the United States banned the song, citing its title as a possible drug reference, a charge the band denied, saying it referred to an airplane flight to England. The band didn't slow its influence. Music historians credit 8 Miles High as a foundational recording in raga rock, the fusion of Indian classical music with Western pop, and one of the earliest examples of psychedelic rock. It reached number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100. McGuinn later said the guitar solo was his attempt to translate John Coltrane's saxophone phrases onto a 12-string electric guitar. That experiment, taking the vocabulary of jazz improvisation and moving it into a rock context, was genuinely novel in 1966, and the recording remains a clear line of departure for the psychedelic music that dominated the following 2 years. Number 14, I Feel Free by Cream. Cream released I Feel Free as a single in December 1966. Jack Bruce and poet Pete Brown wrote it, and its structure, moving between a cappella vocal passages and bursts of hard rock, had almost no precedent. The opening section, built entirely on layered voices with no instrumental backing, sounds like something from a decade later. Cream's members, Jack Bruce on bass and vocals, Ginger Baker on drums, and Eric Clapton on guitar, were already pressing against the edges of blues-based rock and I Feel Free showed that their ambitions ran past any single genre. The song reached number 11 on the UK singles chart. Both Clapton's guitar work and Baker's drumming were formally unconstrained in ways that anticipated the extended improvisation that defined late 1960s rock and, eventually, progressive rock in the 1970s. The band had formed in July 1966, and I Feel Free was among their earliest recordings. The fact that they arrived at something this structurally adventurous so quickly says something about how deliberately they were working outside the conventions of the time. Number 13, People Are Strange by The Doors.
When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're...
Released in September 1967 from the album Strange Days, People Are Strange was written by Jim Morrison and Robbie Krieger. It runs just over 2 minutes but establishes a mood and lyrical perspective unlike anything else on pop radio that year.
When you're strange, when you're strange.
Ray Manzarek's organ work and the waltz-like rhythm gave the track a carnival-style unease that underscored the alienation in the words. The song reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100. The Doors had recorded Strange Days at Sunset Sound Studios in Hollywood in the spring and summer of 1967. Its influence on what became known as goth rock in the following decades has been widely documented by music historians who trace the atmosphere and lyrical stance of that genre directly back to the Doors' recordings of this period. The band's ability to compress discomfort into a 2-minute pop structure, rather than spreading it across an extended piece, was part of what made People Are Strange so striking and so durable.
When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're...
Number 12, A Day in the Life by The Beatles.
Nobody was really sure if he was from the house of law.
A Day in the Life closed Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1967 and was immediately banned by the BBC. What the band couldn't contain was the song's structural ambition.
I saw a film today, oh boy.
John Lennon and Paul McCartney wrote it from 2 separate, unrelated fragments. For the orchestral bridge between them, George Martin instructed a 41-piece orchestra to begin on each instrument's lowest note and rise to the highest over 24 bars, with complete freedom as to how they got there. The result was a controlled wall of sound with no precedent on a pop record. The final chord was produced by 4 pianists, striking the same note simultaneously on 3 pianos and letting it decay for over 40 seconds, with studio gain gradually increased as the sound faded. Recorded at Abbey Road in early 1967, the song was ranked number 1 on Rolling Stone's list of the greatest Beatles songs in 2010. Number 11, White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. Jefferson Airplane released White Rabbit in June 1967. Grace Slick wrote it before joining the band, drawing on a bolero rhythm influenced by Miles Davis's 1959 album, Kind of Blue. The song has no chorus and no repeated hook. It builds from a quiet opening to a full band crescendo and then stops. Its lyrics drew from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. White Rabbit reached number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was among the first songs to address altered states of consciousness openly on mainstream radio, with many radio programmers initially unaware of what they were airing. The relentless escalating bolero structure Slick chose anticipated a technique that appeared throughout rock music in the decade that followed. Number 10, In My Life by The Beatles. Released in December 1965 on Rubber Soul, In My Life was written primarily by John Lennon. Its Baroque-inspired keyboard solo was performed by George Martin, who recorded the piano part at half speed and played it back at normal speed during mixing, giving it a harpsichord-like quality found in no other pop recording of the time.
Out of all these friends and lovers.
Its subject, personal memory, specific places, the passage of time was unusual for mainstream pop in 1965. Most hits centered on romantic scenarios, In My Life moved through specific recollections and arrived at something closer to poetry than commercial songwriting. Lennon later said it was the first song he wrote that was consciously autobiographical. Rolling Stone ranked it number 23 on its 2004 list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. George Martin often said it was his personal favorite of everything the Beatles recorded. Number 9. For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. Buffalo Springfield recorded For What It's Worth in December 1966 and released it in January 1967. Stephen Stills wrote it in response to an incident on the Sunset Strip in November 1966 when Los Angeles police clashed with young people protesting new restrictions on youth-oriented clubs and venues in the area. Its guitar figure, a single repeated pattern, creates a tone of quiet unease from the first note. The layered guitars and harmonies between Stills and Neil Young gave the song a texture that would become standard in country rock and folk rock throughout the following decade. But in January 1967, it was something genuinely new. For What It's Worth reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was adopted almost immediately as an anthem of the counterculture, a role it has never fully given up. The song also marked an early moment in Neil Young's career, whose harmony vocal on the track pointed toward the sound he and Stills would develop further in Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, the supergroup they helped form in 1969. Number 8, California Dreamin' by the Mamas and the Papas. The Mamas and the Papas released California Dreamin' in December 1965. John and Michelle Phillips wrote it during a cold New York winter, and it took an unusual path to its final form. An early version was recorded with Barry McGuire providing the lead vocal. The group later replaced it with their own vocals, but retained McGuire's bass guitar from that earlier session. The arrangement, built around 4 voices with a flute solo by Bud Shank, was unusual for a rock and pop record in 1965. That flute line gave the song a quality that sat somewhere between folk, classical, and rock without fully belonging to any of them. Producer Lou Adler built a sound that was unusually lush by the standards of the time. California Dreamin' reached number 4 in the Billboard Hot 100 and helped define the California sound that shaped dozens of artists throughout the following decade. Number 7, Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Creedence Clearwater Revival released Fortunate Son in November 1969 as a double A-side with Down on the Corner. John Fogerty wrote it in roughly 20 minutes after watching news coverage of the inequalities of the Vietnam War draft. The way wealthy or well-connected families could help their sons avoid service while others could not. It was recorded at Wally Heider Studios in San Francisco. The production is deliberately sparse: guitar, bass, drums, and Fogerty's voice. Nothing softened. Fortunate Son reached number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2014. Its directness, no metaphor, a precise target, made it unlike most protest music of the era and anticipated the confrontational tone of much rock and punk that followed in the years ahead. Number 6, Respect by Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin recorded Respect at Atlantic Studios in New York in February 1967. The song was originally written and recorded by Otis Redding in 1965, but Franklin transformed it so completely that her version became the definitive one, something Redding himself acknowledged publicly. Franklin's arrangement added the famous spelling out of R-E-S-P-E-C-T, the Sock It To Me passage, and the Re-Re-Ra-Ray coda, all contributed by Franklin and her sisters Irma and Carolyn, who sang backing vocals. The recording was produced by Jerry Wexler. Respect reached number 1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B singles chart, spending 8 weeks at the top of the ladder and won 2 Grammy Awards. It remains a landmark in the soul music and is widely studied as an example of how a reinterpretation can transcend the original work. Number 5. Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones.
I see a red door and I want to paint it black.
The Rolling Stones released Paint It Black in May 1966. Its most distinctive element was not the melody or the words, but the sitar at the center of the arrangement, played by Brian Jones. Recorded at RCA Studios in Hollywood in March 1966, the song's modal structure and Eastern-influenced chord sequence pointed directly toward the psychedelic and Indian-inflected rock that would emerge across the next 2 years. Paint It Black reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and in the United Kingdom. It was the first number 1 song in recording history to feature a sitar as a primary instrument. Charlie Watts' drumming on the track drew on a combination of rock and what producer Andrew Loog Oldham described as a Middle Eastern feel, giving the song a rhythmic tension that matched the sitar's melodic line. Its influence on psychedelic rock, dark rock, and alternative rock across the following decades has been substantial, and the song's modal structure has been cited by musicians in multiple genres as a point of entry for exploring non-Western musical traditions within a rock context.
I see a red door and I want to paint it black.
Number 4. Strange Brew by Cream.
Strange brew, do what's inside of you.
Cream released Strange Brew in June 1967. From the album Disraeli Gears, Eric Clapton built the track on a guitar riff drawn from Albert King blues phrasing, but the production, handled by Felix Pappalardi and Tom Dowd, surrounded it with studio density and warmth that had no counterpart in traditional blues recording at the time. The layering of Ginger Baker's drums, Jack Bruce's bass, and the effects applied to Clapton's guitar gave the track a texture that anticipated psychedelic rock production. Strange Brew reached number 17 on the UK singles chart and, alongside the rest of Disraeli Gears, helped define psychedelic blues, a style that shaped hard rock and the blues rock revival throughout the 1970s. Disraeli Gears was recorded at Atlantic Studios in New York in May 1967, in just 11 days, with producer Felix Pappalardi and engineer Tom Dowd capturing a sound that was simultaneously raw and remarkably polished. The album became one of the defining records of the psychedelic blues genre, and Strange Brew was its most radio-ready moment.
Strange brew, do what's inside of you.
Number 3. The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel.
And the vision that was planted.
Simon and Garfunkel originally recorded The Sound of Silence as a quiet acoustic folk song in 1964, and it went largely unnoticed. Columbia Records producer Tom Wilson, without informing Paul Simon or Art Garfunkel, took the original recording in June 1965 and overdubbed electric guitar, bass, and drums onto it, transforming it from a folk song into a folk rock one.
Within the sound of silence.
The new version was released in September 1965 and reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 on January 1st, 1966. Simon first heard the altered version on the radio while living in England. The idea of retrofitting an acoustic recording with electric instrumentation, changing genre after the fact, was unusual and became a significant moment in the emergence of folk rock. The song's subject matter, disconnection, the failure of communication, the isolation of modern life, opened the door to a more serious, thematically ambitious kind of pop songwriting that shaped the music of the decade ahead.
And touch the sound of silence.
Number 2. Born to be Wild by Steppenwolf.
We were born to be wild, so we can climb so high.
Steppenwolf released Born to be Wild in June 1968. It was written by Mars Bonfire, the stage name of Dennis Edmonton, and its most historically significant detail is a phrase in the second verse referencing heavy metal thunder. Music historians consider this the first use of the term heavy metal in a rock song, predating the genre by several years. The track reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the most played songs on FM radio that year. Its placement in the 1969 film Easy Rider gave it a cultural permanence that extended well beyond its chart run. That phrase, heavy metal thunder, entered the vocabulary of rock criticism and eventually gave a name to an entire genre. Few lines in a single song have shaped the language of music so directly.
We were born to be wild,
Number 1, A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke.
Change gon' come. Oh, yes it will.
Sam Cooke recorded A Change Is Gonna Come in January 1964 at RCA Victor Studios in Los Angeles, with an orchestral arrangement by Renee Hall. It was released as a B-side in December 1964, days before Cooke's death on December 11th of that year. It reached number 31 on the Billboard Hot 100 when released as an A-side in early 1965, never becoming a major commercial hit during his lifetime. Cooke wrote it after personal experiences with racial discrimination in the American South, including being turned away from a Holiday Inn in Shreveport, Louisiana in 1963. He'd also been moved by hearing Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind and felt that a white folk singer was speaking to a struggle he, as a black artist, should be addressing in his own work in his own voice.
Change gon' come. Oh, yes it will.
The orchestral arrangement, lush strings, French horns, a production built around gravity rather than danceability, was unusual for a soul record in 1964. Rolling Stone ranked A Change Is Gonna Come number 12 on its list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. It is taught today alongside primary documents of the civil rights movement, and its combination of personal specificity and broad moral scope has influenced artists across generations and genres.
Change gon' come. Oh, yes it will.
20 songs, 20 moments where someone in a studio, or sitting at a piano, or standing in front of a microphone, came out the other side with something that didn't fit the time they were living in, but fit perfectly into everything that was coming. The 1960s gave us music that kept moving long after the decade ended. If one of these brought something back for you today, tell us in the comments. We'd love to know which one landed. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a good time. We're here every week with the music, the history, and the stories behind the songs that shaped everything. Hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.